What an exciting event and great energy in our newly renovated France Hall. What do we think? This is the first event in our new space, so I'm so happy to be able to christen it tonight with you all. A full house. My name is Katie Caljean. I'm the president and CEO of the Maryland Center for History and Culture. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us tonight. We want to extend special thanks to the members of the McCardell family for joining us tonight to celebrate the life and legacy of Claire McCardell. If the members of the family would mind standing so that we can recognize you. Family members, could you stand? Claire was an absolute tour de force, and anytime we have an opportunity to shine a light on her body of work and the impact on the fashion world, you can feel the warmth and reverence in the room. Tonight we convene to celebrate Elizabeth Evitts Dickinson's new book, Claire McCardell, The Designer Who Set Women Free, officially launching today. The Maryland Center for History and Culture is the perfect place to launch this book because the garments in the Barbara P. Katz Fashion Archives were so instrumental in inspiring the illustrious author. Elizabeth's connection to MCHC begins with her time with us on staff as an events coordinator during the Redefining Modernism exhibition in 1998. The exhibition was the first significant retrospective of Claire's work in decades, made possible by the archives established with the garments and personal items donated by the McCardell family members. Like so many others, Elizabeth was inspired by Claire's creative instincts and how she worked at her own rhythm with purpose and intention. In the years that followed, Elizabeth became an award-winning journalist, writing for prestigious publications including the New York Times, the New Yorker, and Harper's Magazine, among many others. But she never forgot about Claire. In 2018, Elizabeth was a contributing writer for the Washington Post magazine when she returned here to research a story on the 80th anniversary of one of Claire's pioneering designs, the monastic dress. That research led her down a path of discovery, as our archives and collections often do, right to the culmination which you hold in your hands this evening. The early reviews are in. Critics have called this book an essential and inspiring account of the most important and underappreciated designer of the 20th century. Perhaps local author Laura Lippman said it best when she noted that this is a timely and important book, a testimony to a powerful woman whose legacy might be lost if not for the prodigious scholarship of Elizabeth Evitts Dickinson. The world at large might have been asleep on Claire McCardell's impact on the fashion world, but we have been living and working adjacent to the designs for decades. We revel in this opportunity to share her impact more broadly by supporting and celebrating Claire through our exhibitions, this incredible book, and this event tonight. We hope that you enjoy the following program and festivities this evening, and we encourage you to visit our Claire McCardell exhibition on the second floor of the building on the other side of the lobby, if you haven't done so already, where knowledgeable staff and docents will be present to discuss and answer any of your questions. We also encourage everyone to follow us on social media to learn more about our latest special events, exhibitions, and more. And if you are not already an MCHC member, we invite you to join us today and become a member of our family. Thank you all again, and enjoy the discussion tonight. I'm going to pass the mic to Chloe to provide a little bit more information on the panel tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. It's really wonderful to see this hall filled with so many spaces. My name is Chloe Green. So many faces. My name is Chloe Green, and I am the Public Programs and Outreach Manager here at MCHC, which is why I just tripped over my words, because I've been working very hard to put together this wonderful event for you all. But, but not just me. But I don't want to hold us back anymore. I am just here to read the bio of our wonderful moderator for this evening, Victoria Rose Pass, who is so accomplished. We've had the privilege of working with Victoria on many projects, and Victoria has done a few virtual programs for us. I see someone's on FaceTime. Hi. So to get started, Victoria Rose Pass is an associate professor at the Maryland Institute College of Art. Her essay, Fashioning Jazz Age Illustration, was published in Yale University Press's Jazz Age Illustration in 2024. And her essay, Primitivizing Accessories, Slave Jewelry, and the Construction of White Femininity in 1920s America, was published in Fashion in American Life, edited by Hazel Clark and Lauren Downing Peters in Bloomsbury 2024. So Vicki has been busy, so we're very happy to have Vicki here. Vicki has also co-edited 2 books, Design Beyond the Canon with Jennifer Kaufman, pardon me, my contacts are getting blurry, Kaufman Buller, and Christopher Wilson for Bloomsbury 2019, and Women's Magazines in Print and New Media with Noliwe Brooks and Ayana Weekly for Routledge 2016. Her writing has also appeared in the Journal of Modern Periodical Studies in Fashion, Style, and Popular Culture. You can follow Vicki's research and discoveries on Instagram at Visual Sustenance, which is, for those of you who are on Instagram, really you have to take a look at it. It is an incredible page. So Vicki received her Bachelor's of Arts in Art History from Boston University, her Master's in Arts in Art History from the Art Institute of Chicago, and her PhD in Visual and Cultural Studies from the University of Rochester. So without further ado, I would love to welcome Dr. Victoria Rose Pass and Elizabeth Evitts Dickinson to the stage. The floor is yours, ladies. I hope you all enjoy. Thank you all again for coming.
Thank you.
Hi. Thanks so much for joining us.
Look at all these faces. No, Chloe, I love it. I felt the same way. I saw all these faces. I am so excited to be here tonight.
Well, I'm so thrilled that you invited me to join you for your book birthday party. Congratulations, Mazel Tov. And also because it meant that I got to read an advanced copy, like a VIP, my little dog-eared version. And just so you know, you're in for a huge treat because the book's fabulous. So good. It's definitely a book that people in my business and fashion history have been waiting for. And I know many of my colleagues are like so excited to devour it. So I wanted to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about kind of your discovery of McCardell. You know, the story sort of starts here. And tell us a little bit about, like, what were the questions you wanted to answer when you started working on this project?
Yeah, you heard that I first discovered Claire McCardell when I was working here in the late 1990s. And what you didn't hear was that at the time I was wearing the world's ugliest suit to this exhibition opening. I basically got attacked by a saleswoman at the department store. I think it might have been Hex. Hex is no longer here, so I can throw Hex under the bus, right? And it was a tasteful amethyst, was what she called it. It was lavender. I looked like I was an Easter egg. It had no pockets. I was sweaty. And I think that we've all had that moment, right, where we're wearing the wrong thing, where we're uncomfortable, where we just aren't wearing anything that feels good. And then I look at this exhibition of Claire McCardell clothes and I'm like, wait a minute. Like, there's pockets and it's beautiful and it's timeless. And I was, at the time, unaware that much of what hung in my closet at home was because Claire McCardell reinvented American fashion in the 1930s and 40s. You know, she was the one who pioneered wrap dresses and leggings and ballet flats and all of these things, mix and match separates. And I never forgot her. So I wrote about her again in 2018, but really the question that I had was, how did she do it? We hear a lot about her clothes. We hear a lot about, they were very modern. She married mass production and design together for the first time to create these ready-to-wear clothes, which didn't exist at the time in the way that we know them now. But how did this girl from Frederick, Maryland, born in 1905, get to helm a massive garment firm, get her name on her own label at a time when a woman couldn't even open up her own bank account? And so those were some of the things that I wanted to explore, as I really wanted to understand who she was.
Yeah, and you've touched a little bit on it, but I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about, like, what were the things that made her such a radical? Like, what sets her apart in her time?
I mean, I think we take for granted now that our clothes are unstructured and easy to wear, and you can just put them on over your head, or you can, but at the time, she was coming out of a tradition where Claire's mother was still wearing that sort of, the corset and the, no bustle. I think the bustle was gone at that point, but you had these structured clothes that you were meant to wear. There was corsets, and there was padding, and there were crinolines, that poofed the skirts out. And the other thing was, you had different dresses for every time of the day. You were meant to wear house dress at home, and then you had a day dress, and then, oh my God, it's tea time to change your dress again. And it's exhausting. And I think what was so radical about Claire is she started to think about, what does it look like to create clothes that are comfortable, beautiful, stylish, easy to wear in the city, and of course that have, where are her hands? Pockets. Everybody wants pockets.
I like that she talked about she wanted, like, something to do with her hands. Like, it was sort of born out of that, like, sense that, like, well, men get something to do with their hands when they're standing. They get to, kind of pose and posture. Why can't women?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. She understood clothes in a psychological way as well, that what we wear isn't just practical, right? That it's also that feeling of when you're uncomfortable in front of your boss, you're at a cocktail party and you want something to do with your hands because you're feeling nervous. Mm-hmm. And she loved to be able to offer that. But it wasn't something that the mostly male garment manufacturers in the garment district in New York wanted to do, because pockets were more expensive, they were harder to sew in. And one of the things that I think is so extraordinary about Claire is she was really technically savvy. She understood the construction of clothes in such a way that they ended up becoming effortless. And you'll read in the book about her fight to get pockets in clothes, and she won. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was wonderful to read all of those places where she was really pushing the industry to do the things that she knew women would like.
That's right. And I think she always had a woman's experience in mind. What does it mean to move through the world as a woman? Not as an object. So it wasn't the male gaze or the societal gaze that she was concerned with. It was, how do you have a wardrobe that allows you to be autonomous, that allows you to move through the world? And some of these dresses that you're seeing up here were really radical at the time. They were draped. She was wearing these large belts that she liked to custom make. And, part of why she did what she did too was, fit has always been an issue in ready to wear, right? How easy is it to find clothes that fit today? Not at all. But what she understood is, if you draped clothes a certain way, or you cut a dress on the bias in a certain way, you could fit it with a belt. You could fit it with spaghetti ties. So she created these design solutions that look very elegant, but they were always practical and pragmatic.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing I'm always astonished by every time I get to look at her clothes up close, is you can see that thoughtfulness about, how will this green dress live in a woman's wardrobe? It's the spaghetti straps that create the waist. So that waist can be a number of different sizes, and it can fit you to how you feel comfortable, not how a designer decided the measurement would be at, the fit models.
That's exactly right. And so that was one of her big priorities, is she didn't feel like a woman needed to trust herself up in a lot of structure to get dressed. And the other thing you'll notice about a lot of these dresses is the closures are in the front, or the closures are on the side. And she did that because she wanted a woman to be able to get dressed by herself. When you have zippers up the back, she used to joke around and say, you may live alone and like it, but if you wrench out your arm, zipping up a back zipper, you're not going to love it too much.
Story of my life.
Story of my life still. And Claire was also unusual in that, she grew up in Frederick. She went to Hood College for 2 years, but then she left and went to what is now Parsons to pursue a costume design degree. And she lived alone for a long time. Yeah. She didn't marry until late in life. And so she really always had this in mind as she was designing what she made.
Yeah, will you talk a little bit about Frederick? What are the things you think that Frederick taught her? What was kind of, like you said, how did this girl from Frederick, Maryland kind of come to lead the New York fashion industry?
Well, I know you already recognized the McCardell family who is here tonight, and I have to say that I knew a lot about McCardell from Frederick just from the writing at the time, the newspapers, but I also learned so much because of the McCardell family. I truly cannot thank them enough for all of their time and energy. And what was so interesting about Frederick was, Claire grew up with her 3 brothers. They lived on Rockwell Terrace. Her grandfather was a co-founder. Yeah, I love that picture, right? Lined up. 301 Rockwell Terrace. And it was, her mother, Eleanor, was a traditional homemaker. Her father was a banker. But what was interesting about them is they were progressive in their thinking, in that not a lot of parents would have allowed their young 20-something daughter to go north to New York. But for as traditional as they could have been in some of their beliefs, they really believed in her talent. And they let her talk them into it, really. She knew from an early age that she wanted to be in fashion. And what was interesting about Frederick is, Frederick was somewhat rural, but in no way remote. And she was surrounded by making. She was surrounded by the mills, their textile mills. Her grandfather was a candy maker, so she got to witness the idea of an idea creating candy molds that he patented and then made the candy. Like, I think the idea of the full cycle of artistic vision, creation, and then just making it happen was something she witnessed her entire life in Frederick.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because she is an unusual fashion designer in that she actually has a couple of patents.
She does.
And that's very unusual. It's very difficult to patent fashion because you can't patent things that are just inherently useful. Like, no one could just patent a men's shirt because then no one would have a men's shirt, right? You'd have a monopoly. But she found ways to do that. And I wonder if it was partly that kind of early influence of her family thinking this is a way to protect my intellectual property or my artistic vision,
Yes, and I think that that's something, again, that question of how did she know what to do, is she had the support of her brothers. They were very close. She had the support. Her father was a banker. Mm-hmm. I found early letters of him talking her through, here's what you need to do to set up your account, and here's how you're going to do your savings. Mm-hmm. There was a pragmatism of Frederick that she carried with her entire life, and I think that in the letters that I got to read, particularly after she died, people talking about no matter how big she got, when she was on the cover of Time magazine, the cover of Life magazine, one of the most famous designers in America in her lifetime, people said she never, she was a good friend. She never got so big that she forgot where she came from, and she returned to Frederick her entire life.
Yeah. And if you all go there, there's a beautiful statue of her there now on the river.
Yes, Carroll Creek.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful thing to see. And you can see the textile mills that Elizabeth is talking about. So let's talk about the clothes.
All right.
You want to tell me about some of the kind of iconic designs that are associated with Claire. So, I think the monastic is kind of one of her first big hits. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So you're going to read the story in the book. This is great. So 1938, this is her first big breakaway design. At the time, no one knew that she made it. And the reason is because at this moment in time, you really didn't have an American fashion designer. American fashion, that industry did not exist. Really, it was Paris. Everybody whose name was known was Chanel, Lanvin, Poiret. Mm-hmm. It was not American designers at all. And so Claire was working for a garment manufacturer, and she had this idea for this dress. And her boss, Henry Geiss, who one person described as a harassed veteran of 7th Avenue, he said, this will never sell. It has no hanger appeal. because when you put this dress on a hanger, it looks like a bunch of limp towels. And at the time, clothes again were much more structured. And so he thought that this wasn't going to sell. So you can read in the book the great story about how she snuck it in and got it out into the world anyway. But the monastic was very revolutionary because, as one designer put it, oh my God, there's no front, there's no back, it's just the same, and you put it over your head, what's happening? And so this dress could be fit to your body, to your size, and she iterated, as you can see, short sleeve, long sleeve. One thing that Claire did that I loved is she believed if you bought something of hers, it should last forever, and that you could update it each season. And she kept sort of similar designs, iterations of her designs in her collections forever. And so that way, like, you really could build on your collection of Claire McCardell clothes.
Yeah, and you have stories of women in the book who like kept the designs for years.
Yes.
Here you can see some like spaghetti strap style monastics from a little bit later.
Yeah, the
same
spaghetti
idea.
wraps are so great. I love those. And the thing about the monastic, as we get to the next slide, if you want to pop that up, so the monastic dress didn't have her name on it, and you're going to read in the book, it instantly got copied. Everybody was stealing it, which was supremely ironic because what most people did at the time was steal from Paris. And you get to read about Claire's years in Paris where she went over and her job was to basically go steal designs that then American manufacturers could copy and produce at home. And she's like, this is terrible.
Fashion is a lawless industry.
It is lawless. It was crazy. And they would make them go in and watch these shows, and they had to memorize the designs and then go sketch them really quick afterwards without getting caught. And so the monastic got copied. And because it got copied, it actually lost the manufacturer money. So this is when you start to see she gets smart, and with future designs, she starts to patent them. Mostly because she wanted to make sure that she could continue to make her clothes and be successful in her business.
Yeah, and the popover is one of her designs that is like the monastic, something that she designed season over season. This green dress is a popover dress over here. So this one comes out of the war years, right? It's 1942. Do you want to tell us a little bit about like how the war informed and influenced how McCardell was designing? I kind of feel like this is where she really makes her name.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have to think about the years. So roaring 20s. And then you get Claire living through the Depression and everything that happened. And then there's the buildup to the war. And of course, the fear of that. Her brothers served in the military. And with war came rationing. And the other thing that came with war was the cutoff of Europe. Europe was cut off. And Claire was one of a handful of designers, editors, to be the last in Paris, just months before it fell to the Nazis. And as she was sailing away, because it was steamships at the time, she noted, I think that this is the end of something I can see. And I could read her letters here, just upstairs in that library, writing her parents of what it was like to be in Paris as it was basically shutting down because of the war. And so she gets back to New York, and not only are fabrics rationed here, but there's also nothing coming from Paris, and most designers panicked. And Claire was like, "This is great." Like she's like, creativity within construct was where she really thrived. And so she was using materials that weren't rationed, like mattress ticking to make pants, and she was using surplus parachute fabric from the military to make outfits. Well, the popover was because all these women were going to work in war factories, and they had literally nothing to wear because they didn't know how to dress women for a factory. So you start to see other designers creating things like overalls and workwear for the factories. This was the sort of Rosie the Riveter look that we know so well. But the fashion designer Diana Vreeland, very famous designer for Harper's Bazaar, came to Claire and she's like, "But the women at home, we're suffering, Claire, we're suffering. We'll have to do all of our own housework." And she was just distraught about this fact that, like, it was a hard time. You were often at home alone, your spouse was deployed, you were working during the day, And aprons actually weren't allowed to be made. Aprons were rationed, so you couldn't just make an apron. So Claire basically made what she called the popover. And she made it with a material that wasn't used in women's wear at the time, which was denim, a soft denim. And it was effectively a wrap dress that you could pop over your clothes while you cleaned your house or while you ran your errands. And you'll notice there's this big patch pocket on the first one. It's because you could put like a garden trowel in it, or you could put a flashlight in it because there were blackout drills. And the idea was that you could, it had an oven mitt attached to the,
Just in case.
it was a little literal, but Claire, who never wanted to confine her women just to the kitchen, got rid of that oven mitt kind of quick. And then it, as you can see, it started to evolve into a proper wrap dress. Women loved it, and she made popovers for the rest of her career. Yeah, and you can see the amazing collection of popovers here at the Maryland Center for History and Culture. And the name popover was because of Lord and Taylor's excellent marketing at the time. Her boss at the time, or her partner at the time, wanted to call it the Mrs. Busybody.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so luckily that died.
I
on the
can't
vine.
imagine Mrs. Vreeland standing for that either. Not her style either. So, well, you've talked a little bit about the impact of MCHC, and we are both, of course, inveterate archive hounds.
Yes.
So I want to ask you about your experience in the archive. I know you worked here, I know you were FIT and all over the place. But I know MCHC was like a kind of really crucial archive for you because, of course, so many of Claire's papers are here. So you give us a really vibrant sense of who Claire is in the book, I think, because of these archives. Will you tell us a little bit about what you were able to access there that helped inform the book?
Absolutely. And again, this is because of the McCardell family, Claire's brothers. At the time, you know, they went through and they collected not only her letters and her ephemera. You get to see like the clothes that she wore. You get to see what she collected. So understanding how she scrapbooked her own life was really amazing. And so it still sort of floors me that you can walk into a public institution and go to a librarian and say, can I please see these, you know, decades-old papers to try and read about this life? This is what is so wonderful about institutions like this one. And I got to read her letters, her handwritten letters. I figured out how to decipher her cursive. And, you know, it took me months to go through all of this. I transcribed every letter. And I then was able to slowly start to understand who all the people were and to triangulate that against other research and other archives. I had the great fortune of traveling down to South Carolina to John and Bonnie's, where there's even more letters. And what I got to read there were letters that were sent after Claire died. And I'll tell you what, you learn a lot about somebody and how people felt about them when you get to read their memories of them. And these just pages and pages of extraordinary material up in that collection.
Yeah, and she was quite a private person. And one of the really exciting things about reading your book is that it really opens up her private life to the reader for the first time. And it's exciting, you know, just to read about an unconventional life in this period of history. And I think it's exciting to get a sense of like what she did for fun and what her apartments were like and who was in her life. Can you tell us a little bit about what you found when you were learning a little bit more about Claire's private life and how it might change how we think about her work and her life?
I was really interested. I mean, honestly, I was curious how she stayed single until almost 40 at a time when you really were meant to get married. I mean, you couldn't go out and have dinner in New York without an escort, without a male escort. Like, you had to have a male chaperone. And so that was a question that I had, and I was very sensitive, right? Because when someone's private in their life and then you come along decades later, it feels like I didn't want to pry, but I also felt like understanding how she navigated societal's pressure on a woman being all of these things, because it's not like much has changed, right? This idea of having to juggle a lot of different roles. And so I'm always interested in people who are visionaries, but then what does it look like in your day-to-day life to be a visionary? Because I imagined it actually might have been a little lonely for her at times to think so far ahead. She really did. She invented mix and match separates in 1934, And it was, nobody knew what those were. They didn't understand that you could have separates. And now that's the foundation of everything we wear. So I got to learn about her marriage to Irving Drought Harris. Irving is an interesting character. He's an interesting guy. He had a marriage prior to Claire's with a literal sugar mama. She was the heiress to the Spreckles sugar fortune. And Irving was a fascinating guy, and you'll learn more about Irving. But what I liked about learning about Irving is I think that there was certainly love there, and there was certainly a relationship, but I think he also didn't need her to be a wife in the way that some husbands would ask her to be. And he had his own money, and he had his own maids, and he didn't need a housewife. And there were moments, and you'll read about him in the book, where he was very traditional. So it was a marriage I was trying to understand, because she was so unconventional in a lot of her ways that I wanted to try and parse that relationship more.
Yeah, I mean, I think you really get a sense of how she navigated gender roles and sort of being in this marriage that was sort of slightly unconventional because she was this high profile working woman. And I also I found this photograph of them in Frenchtown, which was her house.
Yeah.
Like that she carved out these spaces for herself, whether it was her house in Frenchtown or the room that she had and the apartment that they shared. And I found that really, it was just very telling. It felt I could understand that.
I think she compartmentalized, which you had to do at that time.
Yeah.
And he indulged it. And I don't think he was always thrilled by it, but I think that it was a marriage that worked for them. And I had the great fortune of actually interviewing Irving Drought Harris's granddaughter, who was going to be here tonight but couldn't be, and just, again, illuminating everything about what she understood. And Irving came with 2 stepchildren, and John and Liz. And the woman I interviewed is John's daughter. And it was so fascinating to hear Emily Harris Jones talk about how her father credited Claire with really being the steady anchor in his life. She wasn't he never described her as being overtly maternal. She was respectful. She loved them, and she was very, she treated them like adults, I think, and she listened to what they wanted. And John often said the McCardell family, the whole family, Eleanor, the grandparents, really saved him because Irving, unfortunately, wasn't the greatest of fathers. He came of that time that believed that he was going to make his son a man, and that often came at the expense of his son's well-being.
Yeah, and you really get a sense of the importance of the warmth and safety of the McCardell family home, both for Claire and for John.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think this kind of leads us into talking about some of the other people in McCardell's life. And I want to say, you have a great note at the beginning of the book about names, and I love that you make note that you call her McCardell, because that drives me nuts when people write about women that they call her their first name. So I'm sorry I've been casual, but I do think we should, respect women in the same way we respect men and use their last names. Unless it becomes confusing.
It's really interesting. I didn't realize this is such a debate in biography, is that oftentimes they want you to name a woman by their first name because it's more approachable. But in most biographies of men, they get their last name.
I mean, would you say Abe?
Yeah, you wouldn't say Abe. Yeah, he had a nice stovepipe hat. Yeah.
Or Eve instead of Saint Laurent.
Yeah.
Wow.
and so in fashion, it's not a Christian, it's a Dior. It's not a Coco, it's a Chanel. Mm-hmm. But also, Claire McCardell fought very hard to get her to be the first ready-to-wear designer with her own name on her label. And part of why I named the book Claire McCardell is because I want her name back on what she did. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. That was sort of a diversion. But I wanted to talk about, the other people in her life. And especially I wanted us to talk about Mildred Orrick, who was a really important friend of Claire's when she gets to New York at Parsons and for the rest of her life.
And I don't want to embarrass Sarah. Where's Sarah? Can you raise your hand? So Sarah Orrick is here tonight. Sarah is Mildred's daughter. And I was able, there she is. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah was able to really help illuminate Mildred for me because, of course, I also don't believe in biographies that kind of are these icon stories where it's like the person at the top and they did it all. And we know that's not true. We know there are these people who form them. And Claire was in the center of a constellation of extraordinary women in the 1930s and 40s who literally built the fashion industry as we know it today. So it wasn't just Claire's name that got forgotten. It was all of these extraordinary women who, as I learned more about them, it's really, I was interested in almost this forgotten feminism between the wars. These women who were born into suffragism, they had the right to vote, and they were able to parlay that into careers, and they just did it. They really believed that women should be on equal footing. And Mildred was one of those. And one of my favorite stories from Sarah that I learned is that, Mildred was a little bit of a rebel, just like Claire. So there's a story in the book where Claire refuses to wear the required wool swim stockings that you were supposed to wear on a public beach in the 1920s, because God forbid you see some legs.
Gotta cover your legs.
Yeah.
Very important.
And Mildred, meanwhile, was growing up or was living in Florida at the time where the male legislator had banned flapper wear. And she was like, forget it. And she's dressing in her flapper attire. And so Mildred was Claire's roommate, and they were good friends throughout their life. And there's a poignant moment in the book where they have a falling out, which is, I think, important to know. And there's an Auric dress here, that black one at the end. And so part of my goal was to also illuminate some of these women that were pivotal to this entire movement.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that your book uncovers is the story of the leggings, which
Yes.
you'll read more about when you read about it in the book. But this was an innovation that really we owe to Mildred Orr.
To Mildred, and then Claire popularized
Yes.
them, and there was some miscommunication that you will read about who originated the design.
Yeah.
But the two of them remained friends, and Mildred would come back towards the end of Claire's life to play a very pivotal role.
Yeah. And you also talk about, let's see,
Ballet flat.
ballet flats. Josette Walker, who's kind of the third roommate
Yes.
in Paris, right?
Who I love, is that the Camel cigarette ads? I
Yes.
love that. Where that was the other thing is these women started to pioneer the fashion designer as this multifaceted designer. This did not exist, this American designer. And so these women were really breaking ground. And they were starting to license their look and their faces and their clothes. And Claire was selling Chryslers, and I think bread. There was like white bread,
Wonder Bread ad.
Yeah, Clairol. It's funny, she did a Clairol ad, even though she never dyed her hair. She believed in letting her hair go gray. She didn't care.
Yeah, she was a real kind of marketing genius, and she hired the right people. I mean, I really like that about the book, that it isn't just this like solo revolutionary. It's like it was her in this constellation, like you said. And I think a great thing that this book does is to really demystify the idea that the fashion industry has always been men imposing on women. Like, the fashion industry has historically been one of the places where women have actually been able to find space in business, in design roles, in roles at magazines like Dinah Vreeland. Will you talk a little bit about some of like your favorite women that you found?
Oh yeah,
in the process of this?
Eleanor Lambert kind of invented publicity, and she was exactly as you imagine a woman who would invent publicity. And she was the one who came up with Fashion Week. So when Claire first started out, fashion shows were literally just buyers' previews in these dirty garment lofts where they would set off a little area. Lambert was the one who said, let's start making this into a real fashion industry. Let's have fashion shows. Dorothy Shaver, she was the first woman to become the president of Lord & Taylor, and she's a fascinating woman. She deserves her own biography. She reminds me a lot of the Coen sisters. She lived her whole life with her sister, never married, incredibly artistic. Her sister was an artist. So when I was reading about her, echoes of her life really reminded me of the Coen sisters of Baltimore.
Yeah, there's like so many unconventional women here who were really like kind of trailblazing.
And pioneered what we know today. And I think what I wanted to do with this book is I wanted to center Claire and these women, not just in fashion history, but also in, this history of women moving through time to try and espouse an independence and an autonomy that happens to be fabricated in what you wear.
Yeah.
But what you wear is about so much more.
Yeah, I think you do such a beautiful job of weaving the historical context into the story of Claire and all of these other women's stories, and it really shows the relationship between that continuous fight for bodily autonomy, really, which I think is what fashion is always about, in some ways at the end of the day, like Claire wanting to wear the stockings.
Yes.
Or not wear the stockings.
Yes, she had her own way.
So we should take some questions from the audience.
Yeah, we have, I think, about a few more minutes.
Yeah.
And as people, I think, do you want people to go to microphones, or there's people walking around with microphones? If anyone has a question and wants to come on up, we'll.
I see a hand right there.
And while they're walking, one thing I will say is the other fascinating character I learned about is Lee McCardell, her cousin, who was the famous Baltimore Sun journalist, the award-winning Baltimore Sun journalist. His family is here tonight as well. And I wanted to include his articles verbatim in the book because they're so beautifully written, and I couldn't. But he was embedded during the war and reporting back from Europe. And so you really get this sense of this family being very dynamic and very ingrained in very important moments in American history.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us how she came to collaborate with two of the greatest artists of the 20th century?
I believe you were talking about the moment where she did the Modern Masters series. That's a great question. So in 1955, there was this company called Fuller Fabrics that was in Brooklyn, New York. I think it was based in Brooklyn. And Fuller, the head of Fuller, had this idea that he would work with the modern artists, the modern masters at the time, and there were 5 of them. It was Picasso, Chagall, Leger.
Juan Gris?
Yeah.
Rule Dufy, yeah.
And of course, it was all men. Where were the abstract expressionists, the women doing all the work? That's like Grace Hardigan. Come on. Anyway, Baltimore. Oh. That's right. But what they did was they had this fabric made with artwork. And they hired Claire to be the one to create clothes with this modern masters fabric. And so this is my favorite. I mean, Picasso and your saber. All right, buddy, come on.
Could you be more obvious?
Yeah, but it was that there's a great story in the book about what it took to get all these clothes over to Paris and over to Europe.
And this was Sally Kirkland, right?
This was Sally Kirkland from Life magazine. And, this was a big deal because the woman that's standing next to Picasso is a famous French model named Bettina. And she was a model for all the best haute couture manufacturers, meaning those custom designers. And it wasn't until Bettina kind of gave her sign off and said, these clothes are amazing, that Picasso finally fell in line and agreed to finally do the photo shoot that he'd already agreed to. But this was a moment of triumph of, ready to wear an American design, and Claire coming to the heart of Europe, and Europe really starting to embrace her designs.
It is kind of a little preview of Eleanor Lambert's other great coup, which was the Battle of Versailles, which is a great fashion history moment in the 1970s when American designers come to Europe. So I wonder if maybe this planted the seed in her mind.
I wonder
of doing that, because McCardell was, of course, incredibly influential in so many European. Dior credited her as being an important influence.
He did.
So that's significant.
And of course, we have dresses from this here. And so, great question. There's one behind you.
First of all, congratulations, Elizabeth. This is an
Gregory Weidman. I'm going to cry.
An extraordinary accomplishment. And I'm going to make a huge claim. I am responsible for all of this.
You are. You are.
Because I'm the person that hired her to work here. Without which she would not have seen that exhibit. So,
You are absolutely right. And I was literally telling my good friends who flew in for this event that you are the reason we remember the day I got the phone call that I got the job and I was moving to Baltimore. And if not for you hiring me here.
and it goes back really farther than you probably want to know. Her father was my history professor at Hollins College, American history. And I knew her when she was born.
That's right. That's right. This is the challenge of growing up on a college campus is you have a lot of people who remember changing your diapers.
Oh no.
Or that time I walked out of my diaper. Oh, speaking of diapers, this is a segue. Our gal Claire, she also really pioneered the modern swimsuit. And one of the other things is they were called bathing suits because they had skirts and you're supposed to bathe in them. But Claire was a swimmer. She wanted to swim. And one of her designs was called the diaper suit because it went between your legs and it was shocking. And there's a really funny moment in the book where someone remembers her coming out on this beach at Fisher's Island wearing one of her bathing suits. And she's like, it's a diaper. Oh my God, you're wearing a diaper. But it was a bathing suit. And you could swim in a McCardell.
Yeah, and Vreeland loved it. Vreeland got it, and she was like, don't worry, I'll teach American women how to tie it and how to put it on.
Yep. So that was the other thing is that McCardell's clothes, again, required a little bit of assembly, but not really. But once you knew how to wear them, oh my goodness, it was incredible.
Yeah.
Greg, I'm so happy to see you.
So we know that McCardell didn't license her clothing beyond her death, right? Like you can't go buy a McCardell unless it's vintage. Who do either of you, are you able to speak to who you feel like is in her legacy, whether that be in the 70s, 80s, 90s, or now? It would just be nice to.
That's a great question. And it's interesting because many people in American fashion and in international fashion today told me when I originally reported the story on Claire, they credit her as being their biggest influence. And you can see her in so many collections. I think right now, Tory Burch is one of the pioneers of that. She loves McCardell so much. She came here a few years ago. She saw the collection. It inspired her to create, I'm going to botch the name, the Tory Burch Research Fellowship. We'll get that correct. And Robin Levy, the first Tory Burch Fellow, is here tonight, and she's the one who put together that incredible, helped put together that incredible show that you get to see here. And so it's interesting because the one place Claire was never forgotten was within fashion.
Absolutely.
And to this day, people still credit her as being the reason that the whole industry exists, and they're still making her clothes. I mean, if you start looking at clothes today, you're gonna be like, oh, there's a Claire, there's a Claire. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Halston, it was very much an heir to McCardell.
Calvin Klein.
Calvin Klein, 100%. Even somebody like Tommy Hilfiger, sort of American sportswear, Ralph Lauren. I think there's lots of people we can think of. Even just somebody like Lauren who understood the power of licensing your name, and establishing that designer
and
name.
being in your ads. Claire
Yeah.
was often photographed in her ads. And Donna Karan, I mean, do you remember Five
Yes.
Easy Pieces?
Absolutely.
5 Easy Pieces. from
Eileen
the
Fisher
80s.
too.
5 Easy Pieces was mix and match separate.
Yes, absolutely.
Claire's were 6 Easy Pieces. And so, and we think of Diane von Furstenberg as being the wrap dress inventor. She really pioneered our modern version of it, but
Yeah, McCardell's an important step along that.
She
along
is.
that path. Yeah. I chose the one Isaac Mizrahi dress I have in my wardrobe, which was when he designed for Liz Claiborne. And I think about Mizrahi, who was one of my favorite designers when I was kind of getting interested in fashion as being.
and he loved Claire.
I probably first heard about Claire from following Mizrahi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have time for a few more questions if there's anybody out there who has anything else. And then we'll go have some food and drinks.
Thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit about the extraordinary life that she had in Paris with her girlfriends, which was so, out of the ordinary for American women in Paris during this, amazing time?
That's a great question. Yeah, she got to go to Paris because something that happened in the late 20s is American universities started to create study abroad programs in earnest. And so Claire got to go with Parsons, and it was 26, 27. So imagine being in Paris in 1926 and 27. She was reading The Sun Also Rises while Hemingway was up the block slurping oysters and getting really drunk on whatever Hemingway was drinking that night. But she had an incredible life in Paris, and she was there for a year. Mildred was her roommate, and Josette. And one of the extraordinary things that ended that trip was Lindbergh landed his plane at Le Bourget airfield, and she got to touch the plane. She got to see Lindbergh land that first transatlantic flight, and I talk a little bit about that in the book, and that frenzied moment. But I think that that moment meant more to her because you have to remember it's the birth of modernism. It's the birth of the modern American city. It's the birth of things like flight and mass technology. And Claire always embraced the potential of mass production. She believed that if you married good design with mass production, then you could democratize clothing. You could democratize the way that people could get what they needed. And I think she'd be a little disappointed to see where we've taken it, fast fashion. But it was a moment of like skyscrapers were rising above her at Rockefeller Center when she was back in New York. And it was just such a moment of time, of American ingenuity across discipline. And she got to experience the World Fair that was happening in Flushing Meadows. And so I think that, again, putting her creations and inventions in context to everything that was going on at the time really helped me to appreciate how it is that she did what she did and how she had the vision for it.
Yeah, and I think you really show that period. Still hear me? That she that excitement about mobility and movement, which is so much a part of that like 20s modern moment, which I sort of, is where a lot of my research is, and it was really fun to read it through her eyes. If your appetite is whet for that period, I would also recommend somebody who you talk about in the book, Elizabeth Hawes, who, unlike McCardell, couldn't quite give up the ghost on hand-making clothes, but also, like McClare, was like, Americans can do this better. Like, we know what American women want. American designers can do this. And they were in Paris at the same time, and Hawes writes a great book about it, which is a real critique of the French fashion industry, which is called Fashion is Spinach. And if you find me later, I'll explain the joke.
Yeah, it's really good. But it was refreshing to remember. It was just also interesting to see she married an architect because she was very interested in architecture and design and modernism. She liked the form meets function, pragmatism of modernism. And so you see a lot of that playing out in the clothes that she made.
Yeah, for sure. One last question.
One last
maybe?
question,
Right in the
and then we'll adjourn.
I've got a lot. You get it.
What's one of the stories that you didn't get to put in the book that you wish you had?
Wait a minute, Marnie?
Yes.
Okay, everybody, this is the audiobook reader. This is the woman who...
The voice.
I recognize that voice.
You've heard my voice a lot.
So we have a Shakespearean-trained actor reading the audiobook. So if you prefer audiobooks, I should just bring you up here and you can just start reading it.
I'll totally read it for you.
I mean, there were so many stories I couldn't put in the book. My editor was like, this is great, Elizabeth. It's going to be a door stopper. You got to stop. One story that I didn't get to put in the book, which seems like a small one, but I think really speaks to who Claire was. You can learn a lot by what people decide to keep. So an archive is interesting in that regard because what we have here is a lot of what Claire saved and what she found important. So you have these letters. You have Joan Crawford writing her and asking her to make her clothes. You've got, like the most famous women. Georgia O'Keeffe loved McCardell. You have the most famous people of the era, Lauren Bacall, Greta Garbo. But she had these letters from the women, the real women in the real world who wrote to her and wrote about what the clothes meant to her. And she also had a letter about a woman, it was truly one of the funniest letters I've ever read. It was a 5-page screed about how a Claire McCardell bathing suit failed her during a much anticipated, hardly saved up, hard-earned trip to Italy. And the letter was hilarious because this woman had a great sense of humor about it, but let's just say it failed in the worst way at a time when she really wished it hadn't. And I can't say what McCardell did with that letter, but I can make a guess after having learned about her life. She saved it because it reminded her always of who she was working for, which was every customer. And she would have troubleshot what happened. Was it the fabric? Was it the manufacturer? Why did this suit not work out? It would have really bothered her that someone saved up to buy her bathing suit, went on this trip, and the suit didn't work out. And so I didn't get to put all of that into the book, but it really helped me understand who she was at her heart, which was someone who deeply, deeply cared about the experience of women and of the people in her life. And I think with that,
Yeah.
I want to just say, oh, thank you. Before we adjourn, I just want to thank again the Maryland Center for History and Culture. I want to thank everybody. The staff here has worked tirelessly to make this event happen. They have supported me in ways that are immeasurable. And I think now more than ever, supporting institutions that care for and house and make accessible our history. The arts, culture, history, vital. And I'm really grateful and appreciative to be here. Would you all sit for 2 seconds so I can take a picture of you from the stage? Thank you. Then you can go have a drink. All right, you ready? I see all my friends who got on tour do this from the stage. Uh-oh, wait. I don't know if this is going to work because the light's right in my eye. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Hold up your books and smile. Hey, everybody. Yeah! I am so honored. Thank you so much. Let's go have a drink.